There is any aspect of their character that you do not like and you know you cannot live with it for the rest of your life, please and please do not say yes to his proposal hoping that he is going to change when you get married. Hey everyone, welcome back to another video. Today we're going to be talking about some of the things or some of the factors you should consider before saying yes to that marriage proposal. This is a video where I will be talking to that African female. It's more of like a letter to my younger self if I were to turn back the hands of time and go to my early 20s. So on this channel we do faith, lifestyle and self-empowerment videos. If it's your first time here, you're welcome. This video I really want us to discuss about some of the things we should consider before getting into a marriage or before saying yes to a marriage proposal. And why I choose to speak to that female African is because that's the community I come from, and we are being raised differently from any other culture. Now, you might want to ask yourself, if the union called marriage is so beautiful, why is it that today we are having so many cases of divorce? Why is it that today we have so many marriages void of sincere happiness? Why is it that today we have so many marriages that are still called or are still binded together simply because of kids or because they are scared of the divorce stigma? Why is it? Why is this? Why is it so if truly marriage is a beautiful union? Now, don't get me wrong. I agree, marriage is a very beautiful union. But I think most of the marriages that are failing today because of some of these elements that I'm going to be sharing with you. The very first one is, dear young female, dear young Doris. The very first thing I'm going to share with you is that if there is any habit, if there is anything that your fiancé is doing that you do not like, and that you cannot live with it for the rest of your life. Why? Because marriage is till death do us part, right? If there is any aspect of their character that you do not like and you cannot live with it for the rest of your life, please and please do not say yes to his proposal hoping that he is going to change when you get married. With my own basic research, most marriages in our community fail because of that one thing or that few things that we tolerated during our courtship days, because we hope that when we get married we are going to perform some kind of magic, some kind of miracle, and suddenly this person is going to change to be that husband that we desire, to be that husband that we want. This sadness or this bad habit of his is just going to disappear and you're going to live happily ever after. Okay? Most marriages fail because these things don't change. Keep going. They keep following you. And now you find yourself in one or two things. Either you walk out of there or you decide to stay there and tolerate it till the day you die. The decision is yours. If you want to live in an unhappy marriage for the rest of your life, fine and good. But marriage is supposed to be happy. It's not supposed to be an endurance ground for anybody. Why am I saying this? Because my gender has been made to see that if they are not married, they are more or less not really valuable, regardless of the amount of education or your degree of intelligence or your degree of self-empowerment or the business or your business, whatever it is you are. If you are not married, my community makes you to feel like, at the end of the day, you're nobody. Your parents keep reminding you everybody is married. You're still here. You're still going, Miss Boss, So please, if you know today that there is this man talking to you and has proposed to you and you have accepted, if there is something about him that you don't like and you cannot live with for the rest of your life, he will not or may not change. I'm going to share a little bit of my experience here. If you're new here, well, I'm going to talk a little bit about my 15-year-old relationship and marriage. I'm not going to sit here and lie that I didn't see my divorce coming. I saw it, okay? But just like you're about to make that mistake right now, I said to myself, you know what? He's going to change. It's a weakness. He's going to come around. He's going to do this. When we get married, things are going to be better. It didn't get better. It got worse. Now, this is it. When you tolerate a bad habit from a man, he takes that as a weakness of yours. He takes that to his advantage. In a better way to put it, he takes you for granted. For example, if you're a Christian woman, if a man knows that you love God and you want to serve God and you want to build a home, and he knows that this particular habit of his you don't like, but because you're a Christian and you believe so much in marriage, you are forced to stay there and tolerate it just because you don't want to get a divorce. Now, this was my case. I went through a lot of years tolerating one and the same thing. It got worse, 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 it got worse. It got to a point where I had to choose between life and death. I had to choose between being a sane woman and raising my children in a more conducive environment, or pretend and be there because of love and raise children that are just going to replicate what they see in my home. So the choice is yours to make. Ask yourself today, what is that one thing my partner is doing that I cannot live with for the rest of my life? It's better for you to let it go now than to hang on to something that is already built on a shaky foundation. Can these people change? Yes, they can. But 90% of the time, they will not, because they take you for granted. They will make no effort whatsoever to change. The next point I want to share with you, dear African female looking up to get married, is that let me sip some coffee first. I want you to know that the success of your marriage does not depend entirely on you. That's the lies that we were told growing up as African females. We were raised to understand that the success or the failure of our marriage rests in our palm. That's a lie. The success of your home will depend on one thing and one thing alone: that you and your partner have the same vision as far as marriage is concerned, as far as home building is concerned, values are concerned. Now, if you are a traditionalist, if both of you believe in the traditional way of marriage, of course, you have the same vision, right? But if you are, for example, a Christian and you want your marriage to be according to the principles and standard laid down by our Father, and maybe your husband says he's a Christian but he's not a practical one, or he's more of religious, and so there are a lot of discrepancies in the way he thinks, the way he does things. It doesn't tally with what the Bible says. Now, it takes two to build a home. That's why the Bible talks always of the man and the wife. It takes two to perform your duties. That's why the Bible talks, if you look at the book of 1 Corinthians chapter 7, it tells you that the man has a duty to play, the woman has a role to play. We all have our own little thing that we need to contribute to stability of a home. It's very important, okay? It takes two. So I want you to know today that before you say yes to a man, I want you to understand that you're not going into that marriage to break every piece about your being. You're not going into a marriage with a slave mentality. No. You are a helper to your husband. What does that mean? It means he has to also put something in for you to help that thing to elevate it, right? I just want you to understand that don't go into a marriage with a slave mentality. Don't go into a marriage believing that you have to be so nice to your in-laws. You have to tolerate all kind of rubbish, all kind of nonsense. You just have to practically lie on the floor, let people walk on you. So you have to please them and please your husband. By so doing, your marriage is going to be successful. It will not be successful if your husband is not in agreement with you. It will not be successful if your husband husband is not playing his role as he is called on to play his role. Because what will happen is you will get to a point called elastic limit, and when you get to an elastic limit, what happens? It splits, it breaks. It means, and in this case, in the human form, is either you can't take it anymore, you become tired, you become sick, you become mentally unstable. Worst case scenario, you exit the world. We have seen this of Sister Osinachi. We have so many examples around us. So go into a marriage, have conversations with a man to understand the vision of your home, to understand the foundation of your home. Now, as Christians, I know some people will say, Sister Doris, you need to pray, you need to fast, you need to, and we are not going to go into that. We'll talk about that in another video. Here we are talking about the practicalities of marriage, okay? Before we look at the spiritual thing of your marriage. If your husband is not spiritual, it's a whole other conversation, right? So, of course, go in there being ready to do your best as a wife. But I don't want you to ever stigmatize yourself as a failure. And so because of that, you want to break the rock and remove water from it to save your marriage. It's not your responsibility alone. It takes two to make it work. The next thing I want to talk about is checking of compatibility. That's, you check about the history of this person, where he's coming from, his family, and his personal opinion. I'm one of those that never looked at someone's family or someone's tribe to take an opinion about them, because I always say that it depends on the individual. But with my experience, from my experience and from my parents' experience, I have learned that in every marriage, you need to look at someone's family history. Now, looking at someone's family history doesn't mean that you're just going to sentence someone as a bad husband or a possible bad husband because they are coming from so and so kind of home. No, this is how you're going to check compatibility. Right? If a man, for example, if the man is coming from a polygamous home, if the man is coming from a broken family, have important topics about marriage with him. For example, talk about polygamy, talk about cheating, talk about having children out of marriage, talk about finance, talk about the values of home, talk about raising children. Bring up these important marital topics with him. Now, the way he is going to approach this topic is going to tell you if his opinion, if both of you are compatible. This is an example. If you are that kind of a woman or a Christian like myself who believe that adultery is a sin, okay, and you're having a relationship with someone who comes from a broken home, for example, or with someone who comes from a home where there are children from wedlock, there are children born out of marriage, maybe their father have children with other women and their father has them, or someone that is coming from, from a polygamous background, it's good to understand what they see, what is their opinion as far as having children out of wedlock is. If you do not stand for that, if that's not something you can tolerate, that's not something you believe in, and he believes in it because in his family that has happened, so to him it's okay for him to also do that, or it's okay for that to happen in his home, there's problem of compatibility. We are not going to talk about blood and all of that. We are talking about practicalities right here. Now, but if you have a conversation with your husband and he makes you to, or your husband to be, from his opinion or from the conversation, you understand that, first of all, he hates the fact that this had to happen, but he has no role to play. The parents are to be blamed. But as a young man growing up, he is doing everything possible to make sure that he doesn't leave the same example or the same practicalities that his parent went through. As a man, he's trying and educating himself and empowering himself to become a better father than his dad was. Meaning, I'm not going to put my children through the same thing that my father put me. I'm not going to expose my children to stepmotherhood or multiple kids and step siblings wahala, because I didn't have a good experience. So I want to spare my children from that. Now you see that, okay, even though he's coming from this kind of family history, he has a different opinion, and because of the way he reasons, we are compatible at this point. It's very important to check family history and compatibility vis-a-vis that person's opinion, because this is why you have so many African men today that comes from this kind of family situations with this kind of family history. They find themselves repeating the same thing in their home, and they use their parents as an example. Meanwhile, when they were growing up, they didn't like it. You have a man that will say, but my father did this, or our parents used to do this, our parents used to do this, so it's okay, there's nothing wrong, we are Africans, we are this, But there are also men that grow up to say, you know what, I didn't like this thing, I didn't like that, so I don't want to replicate this in my family. So it's always good to have this conversation. Pay attention to their family history, so it's going to direct your conversation, okay? And from that, you're going to check your compatibility with this man. If you guys are not compatible, hear me today. It is better to break an engagement than to break a marriage. The devastating effect is different. Of course, having a broken marriage is not an easy thing, because you put in a lot. You put in your mental, physical, financial, emotional, and every energy into it. So whenever it breaks, whether if you're the one that took the decision or your partner took it, it hurts. So it takes time to heal. So spare yourself this and just do this now before you say yes to that proposal. Now, this one that I want to share, I know most of my female my ladies wouldn't like this. I want you to understand this before you say yes to a man's proposal or your fiance's proposal. I don't care what it is he's telling you now. I don't care if he's telling you, I want my wife to be, I don't want my wife to work, I don't want my wife to do this, I don't want my wife to do that. Don't go into a marriage with the mentality of receiving without giving. Why do I say so? Most often, my gender is always making a long list of what they want in a man. I want my husband to be like this, I want my husband to be like that. It's good to have all those expectations. It's good to set all these values. But what we fail to do to balance it up is to ask ourselves, have I built myself to the level and standard that can sustain this kind of man I am wanting? Because you will be expected to give back into that relationship. Remember, I just said the success of your relationship does not depend on you alone. This is assuming that you have taken the time to build yourself, okay? So while you're making all these long lists, this is what I want, that is what I want, focus on yourself, because this does not even necessarily need to do only material thing. It doesn't mean that you're supposed to have your own money, you're supposed to have a job, or you're supposed to have a business running for you. This is very important. Financial independence in a marriage, I can't emphasize it enough, is very important. When you are going into a marriage hoping that man is going to take care of your finance, your problems, your family problems, my sister, you're going to encounter a lot of problems. But when you build yourself financially to have that mindset of an independent woman, it helps you, it puts you in a kind of safety precautionary position where you know that should things go sour, we are not planning that things should go sour. Should things go sour, I'll not be forced to stay here because I don't know where to go, I don't know where to start, right? Now, if something happens, you will be there because you want to be there. You will not be there because you don't know where to go or where to start, right? And when you are moving out of a marriage where you did your best, where you were not only a receiver, you walk out of that marriage with your shoulder up high. Now, this is it. I used to say to my younger ones that when you get married, do your best in that marriage in such a way that when you are leaving, or if you have to, God forbid, but it's life, if you have to leave, let your fingerprints be on every single thing about that home, including the man. I used to say that and people will laugh. I say yes. Be it in a way that if you decide today that you want to leave, it will take them 20 years or forever to erase your effect in that home. Why? Because you were not only a receiver, you were a builder, you were a supporter, you were a helper, that kind of a thing that a man sits and turn and look at the house and remember, oh, this plate is coming from my wife. Even if he breaks the plate, he will still remember, he will see a plate that looks like that plate, See seed, and sometimes the way the house is organized, if he walks into the house and the house is not organized, he'll think, oh my God, my ex-wife used to put the house like this, my ex-wife used to decorate the house well, my ex-wife used to do this, that one that he wants to dress up like this, and he's thinking, oh my God, my ex-wife got me this shirt, or my ex-wife used to do this. Be a giver. Now, don't get me wrong. You're not doing the things because you're hoping that way. No. You're doing this thing because it's sweet also to provide for the one you love. It's sweet for a husband to sit and just expect the wife, or don't expect anything, and the wife just surprises him with his favorite perfume, his favorite shoe or shirt or watch or jewelry or whatever. When you have a mindset of giving, when you go into your home, it reduces the burden on your husband, because for most times some marriages fail because of financial burden that the woman comes into the marriage with. You come into the marriage with a whole lot of financial baggage. You have to solve your family problem, your own problem, plus the husband's own problem, and all of that stuff. So think of what can I give while you're thinking of what can I get. And the last but not the least thing you should consider before saying yes to a man's proposal is to take it to God. I'm serious. If you are a Christian, please, I beg you, take the man you're dating, take the man who has proposed to you to God. I'm not saying you should drag his hand in front of your papa. I'm saying, excuse me, in your quiet time, in your prayer time, put him in front of God and pray and ask God to help you. This is one thing I want to tell you. It was my experience, but I'll tell you this so you don't make that mistake. You see, most often when we go to God with a prayer, if you're someone that has a connection with your spiritual, right, you will always get the answer of no. But you see, that fleshy side of God, or that materialistic side of God, or whatever it is that's not spiritual, will tell you, what, you can make do with this. You can say yes. What do I mean? You take a man to God and you pray about him, and God tells you he's nice, he's kind to you, yeah, he's cute, he takes care of you, he provides for you, but he's not your husband, because God starts telling you why he's not your husband, and you rebel. you disobey, and you go ahead to get married because of all the other good things that he's doing. Meanwhile, there is something, or there are some things that he's doing that is not even godly and is also not acceptable to you. But for one reason or the other, because the Bible says the flesh and the spirit always wrestle, because these two things, they want different things, and so we always find ourselves leaning towards the fleshy decision. This happened to me not once, not twice, not thrice, okay? But I stayed because of the first reason I gave you guys, hoping that it's gonna change. The third time when I took this to God, I was already married. That was a time when I had to decide if to keep staying here or to move on. I was bugging my father's ear, that's God's ear, because he has told me time without number. Let's note this here. Not every man that comes to your life is supposed to end up being your husband. Some will just be there to be your friend, to be your brother or your whatever, your best friend. They are not meant to be your husband. That's why they will never ever fulfill that role of a husband. They will be nice to you. They'll give you gift. They will give you cash. They will do all kind of things for you. But you see, settling down as a husband with you will be their worst nightmare. They will never do it. But oh yes, they will tell you they love you so much. They will tell you love, but they will never ever ever bring themselves to settle down to play a role of a husband. And please don't make that mistake of, if I get pregnant, he's gonna change. He will not, because it's easy sometimes for an irresponsible husband to become an irresponsible father. If you do not understand the value of a home, it starts with what? It starts by being a husband. If you look at the umbrella of a home, you have God, you have the husband, you have the wife, and the children are the last, are right there at the bottom. So if you cannot understand what it is to be a husband to that person that is directly under you, there is no way under the sky that you will skip to go under to be a perfect father. So yeah, without making this video too long, those are some of the points I wanted to share with you, and these are some of the things I will advise my younger self to pay attention to before saying yes. It's very difficult to obey God, but believe you me, when you fall in a position of obedience, the result is always mind-blowing. But how to be obedient sometimes can be challenging. So if you're looking forward to get married, please do not stop. There are beautiful marriages out there, but if you consider some of these points, adapt them to your wants and your likes, your dislikes, and your all of that, so that your own marriage can be counted among the sincere and truly happy homes enjoying your marriage. I'll see you in my next video. If you like the video, share and subscribe if you're not yet subscribed. Bye.